is the only way to pick up audio. The Historic Preservation Commission is a 9-member board appointed by the City Council and serves on a voluntary basis without compensation. The purposes of the commission are to promote the educational, cultural, economic, and general welfare of the city through the preservation and protection of buildings, sites, structures, areas, and districts of historic significance and interest, through the preservation and enhancement of local historic, architectural, archaeological, and aesthetic heritage found in the city, through the maintenance of the distinctive character of the city's historic districts, and through the promotion and enhancement of the city's historic districts and historic aesthetic attraction to tourists and visitors. Our procedure for conducting business is the petitioner for each item will be asked to come forward, state your name for the record, and present his or her request. The board will ask any question the board may have. Once public testimony and discussion for a particular item has concluded, the members of the board will deliberate and will render its decision. Members with a personal or financial interest in any request are required to recuse themselves from voting. I would like to take this opportunity to ask each member of the commission to introduce him or herself, and we'll start from my right and the audience left.
Carol King.
Doug McCants.
Dallas Hanbury.
And Cindy Keeping.
Walter Bush.
Brian Mann.
James Long.
And I'm Richard Bailey, the chairman of the Montgomery Historic Preservation Commission. We also have with us this afternoon members of the Planning Control staff, and I would like to recognize Ms. Christy Anderson to my right and Ms. Paula Richardson to my left. Thank you so much for taking time from your busy schedules to help us out each second Tuesday of the month. We want to note that a quorum of the Historic Preservation Commission is 5 members of the 9-member board. It takes 5 votes of the HPC members in attendance to take action on each item, either for approval or denial. For example, 5 members quorum present. 5 members majority votes are needed to pass a motion for approval or denial. A tie vote 4-4 is a failed motion. With that being said, I'd like to bring to your attention the minutes of our last meeting. The chair will now entertain a motion for its approval.
I move we accept the minutes as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second that we accept the minutes of our last meeting as written and submitted to us. Is there any unreadiness? Any discussion? All those in favor, let it be known by a show of hands. Motion carried. Thank you very much. You have a copy of our agenda for this afternoon, and we'd like to follow our agenda. And our first item for business, our old business, in fact, is a review of the draft of our outbuildings guidelines. Have each one of you had the opportunity to review the guidelines, and if you have any kind of concerns, we'll voice those now, or we'll allow them to stand as printed.
I did hand out a new memo. There was one change made to what was put in the agenda, which was the addition of that in order for someone to receive an expedited review, the shed needed to be less than 100 square feet and also not have any existing violations on the property. So if someone has done something that they weren't supposed to, they're just going to have to go to the board,
Okay.
even if it meets the criteria.
All right. Any response to what Christy has said from anyone?
Mr. Chairman, Christy, did we receive any oral or written comments or reactions?
I got, well, the ARB discussed it, and which is where a comment from Cloverdale Idlewild brought up the paint color issue, and the board brought up vinyl siding. I had one question about the statement of no gambrel roofs, which is that barn-shaped roof. Someone noted that there was one house that they knew of that was a Dutch colonial, and I said that it would be more inappropriate than appropriate most of the time, and it would just mean they would have to go to the board. And the only other comment I got was someone thought this process was too onerous. And I said, I tried to explain that we already have guidelines in place that require new construction meet certain standards. So this is to make it easier. And I don't know if the point was the only way to make it even easier is to not have any review at all. But there seemed to be a disconnect between what she thought this meant and what it means. So, but those were the only comments we got back.
So is there a way to address that concern? Because I can see, can that be addressed in an application format or something that sort of has a checkbox?
Speaking to your microphone.
Can that be addressed in a way that helps them by saying, having a checkbox, something that allows them to quickly assess whether they have met all these requirements?
I'm the one who needs to assess whether or not they meet the criteria.
I understand.
They need to make application like they normally would for a shed, and we have an application form, and it's got a checklist on the back for different types of, an ARB application form, and there's a checklist for different types of projects of what information is required to be submitted. They would still need to submit all of that. It would then be up to me to make sure, to see if it meets the guidelines in this outlined here and in this flow chart, and to make a site visit to ensure that there aren't any other structures in that rear yard or a structure that needs to be removed for this to replace it, because demolition requires ARB approval as well.
Thank you for referring to the chart in the back, and thank Commissioner Mann for showing it to me. I hadn't seen it. That's helpful. I guess we need to monitor over time to see if it's a complicated process, because the whole intent is to make it easier.
The whole intent is to make it easier, because right now, if someone goes out to Lowe's or Costco or whoever sells some of these portable shed buildings, if they made an application and came to the ARB would turn it down. It does not meet the architectural standards that we have for new construction, because it's treated as new construction, that the building needs to be compatible with the main dwelling, which generally means the roof line needs to have an overhanging eave, and it needs to have a horizontal lap siding. And most of the prefab buildings they don't have either one of those. There are a few out there, but there aren't many. So this is to really open that up to make those an option, so someone doesn't have to pay a carpenter to stick build a shed when all they need is a place to put their bikes and their mower.
Just one more question. Did anyone have any comments about the building size being too small or too large, or any comments at all about the 100 square feet?
No.
No.
That has been when the discussion in the NAPC listserv, which is the listserv that is us, it's staff people and commission members, talked about how they regulate outbuildings. 100 square feet to 120 square feet was about the size range that people had those relaxed guidelines for. I think Nashville was talking about going up to 200. That's starting to get a little big. We can always make it bigger. I'd say we start small and see how it goes. And if there's a tremendous call for something larger than a 10 by 10, we could consider that. It would just mean they have to go to the board. It doesn't mean they can't do it. It just means they have to run through the process like they would right now without these in place.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Excuse me, go
Christie,
right ahead.
will this, like flow chart and this new information, can it go on the drop down on the website? This is such a cool flow chart. I mean, you know.
We'll need to figure out a way to present it so that people don't look at this and make it their own checklist and skip the need to make application part and just start plopping sheds in their
Yeah,
backyard.
could be.
So,
If it's on there, they may just think it's an automatic
because that's what
thing.
happened with windows. We tried that
Right.
with some window manufacturers. They came in, they presented the windows. The board said if someone comes in and wants to replace windows and they match and there are these windows, then I could approve them. And people took that as being pre-approved, which meant
Right.
they were popping in windows that we had never seen before. So we had all sorts of problems with that. So yeah, we just need to figure out, if we do it, it just needs to be very clear that there is an application process, but there might be a way to fast track if certain criteria are met.
Okay. Anyone else? Are we comfortable? Is everybody comfortable? Anyone has any heartburns of any caliber that you'd like to articulate? Okay, all right. Thank you very much for your
Well, y'all need to make a formal motion and adopt
Okay.
it for me to be able to use
Sure,
it.
all right. The chair will now entertain a motion for adoption of the guidelines. Or moved, second? All right, it's moved and properly second. Any unreadiness? All those in favor, let it be known by a show of hands. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving on to new business, presentation by Dr. Dallas Hansberry, the Montgomery County Archives, and introduction.
That one. That would probably be, well, unless it's easier for you to click over there.
All right. Good evening, everyone.
Good
Ooh,
evening.
I'm gonna blow out the speakers. So I am Dr. Dallas Hanbury. Went to Middle Tennessee State University for my PhD, which is in public history with an archives concentration. I've been the Montgomery County Archivist since December 2015, and the purpose of this presentation is evident from its title. A lot of people in Montgomery don't know that we have an archive, and as archivist, you know, it's my responsibility to inform people. So with that, we have this brief presentation. The county archives is located downtown at Washington and Lawrence. If you've lived in Montgomery any amount of time, you'll recognize it as the old Montgomery Advertiser building, correct? It's directly across from the old courthouse, which is where the sheriff's office is now. Open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. No research appointment is necessary. We have on-street parking as well as a free public parking deck on McDonough Street. So take advantage of that. And this is obviously our building here. We do not have the whole building, just the bottom floor where the handrails are. All right, so we've actually had a county archive for quite some time now, since the mid-90s. As I understand it, the primary driver behind that was the County Historical Society, with input, of course, from County Commission, the Probate Court, and the State Archives. Uniquely, we are a department of the Probate Court, although we serve county government. So that's just a little quirk. At the time that the archives was created, we were still across the street in the old courthouse, which posed some logistical challenges, particularly that the records created by the county usually stayed with county offices due to a lack of space. Fast forward to the late 2000s, 2009 to be exact. The county has purchased the old Advertiser building, renovated it, and moved County Commission, Probate Court, County Archives, and a whole host of other offices across the street. And that was really a boon because for the first time, the county was able to unify, bring together the county records into one place. Let's see here. All right, so All of you, I'm sure, have done some historical research in your time and been to a lot of different institutions. And as you know, all county archives are not the same. Some tend to be more society-based and unaffiliated with local government, but the county archives, as I just mentioned, is a county government department. To that end, our primary mission is to, in short, take care of the county records. And so that's, part one of our three-part mission. However, Montgomery County being older than the state, we obviously have a rich documentary heritage. And so we will take in non-government records. And one of the prime examples of that would be the Emery Fulmer papers. For those who are watching at home or don't know, Emery Fulmer was Montgomery's longest serving mayor and was a unique character. He served from 1977 to 99, and we have a very extensive collection of his papers. And that's really amazing because we get a 22-year look at Montgomery in a lot of facets, obviously through a government lens, but still. And lastly, because we are, a county government department, our records are regulated. By that I mean we have retention schedules, meaning how long can we keep the records, and if and when can we destroy them. And so I do a lot of that with county departments. So every year we get audited, and after the audit, I'll go around and we'll take stock, we'll do an inventory, and we'll get the process rolling in terms of either getting the records destroyed or moved into the archives. And that's a close-up shot of our entrance there. You can see a little bit of the sheriff's office in the far right corner there. So our physical facilities, when I interviewed for this job and they took me around the building, I almost fell out because I've never seen a county archive so well off. We have 5 rooms, 5 vaults. 3 have records and then 1 is full. The other 2 are about half full. And as the county continues to produce records electronically, that will be an interesting situation in terms of how much demand is placed on our space going forward. All told, we have 7,700 square feet of storage, which is a lot for a county archive. And to maximize that space, we have compactable shelving, which is exactly what it sounds like. The shelves compact like an accordion when we're not using them, and then when we need to go down an aisle and get something, we can open those shelves up. Each room has a thermostat, so temperature is really important to records. The cooler it is, the better. Now read that first point really closely, that last line. And humidifiers. What's the last thing we need more of in Montgomery? Humidity, but we have that. I don't know why. We never use it. Our humidity never drops below the point where we need to kick them on. So as I mentioned, we have space for growth. And the first point is really essential. We have a secure environment for the first time, right? Only the archivist and a few other officials can get to those records. It's, the public has a public access area, but these records are secure. No records walking out the door, which does happen at archives. It's happened at universities across the nation. This does happen. And in Montgomery, because we are older than the state, we have some pretty essential records that don't need to walk out the door. So the little things really make a big deal in the end. Here's a picture of one of the rooms. You can see the shelving. That shelving is amazing. It is worth the investment. You can see a little work area on the right, and this is one of our 3 rooms. And I don't know what it is about contractors putting archives in the basement, but we are, look at the ceiling, in the basement. So we have fire suppression, but we also have plumbing in the ceiling, which poses unique challenges should a pipe bust. Essentially, we're doing cleanup duty. There's real no way to deal with that. You can tell we have some little drip pans, but that's not going to stop anything, really. We have some water sensors on the floor. They're like smoke detectors for water. If the water hits it, it'll, emit a loud sound, but that only works if we're there, right? We can't, in the middle of the night, if a pipe busts, we're in trouble. Excuse me. So I mentioned, the digital information environment. The county, and I imagine the city as well, now for some years has moved to a process of, of creating most of its records electronically. So as county archivist, excuse me. Excuse me.
It's that time of year.
All right. So As county archivist, I have a responsibility to know how these systems work that we use to create our records. Because if we get hacked, like we did in September, and we're shut down for 2 weeks, we need to know that our records are not only safe, but that we can keep operating. To that end, I work with our IT department as much as possible to understand that process. Should a crisis occur, I can step in and do my part. As much as possible, I try to provide advice on how to manage these records. This is, even though it's 2018 still, for some people, a new process, right? I mean, not everybody grew up in the computer generation. And that's totally fine. That's, again, one of my responsibilities as archivist. And believe it or not, some county departments still use microfilm as backup. So our records are electronic now, right? But particularly probate court and records and recording, we make 2 microfilm copies, and one we keep on site. The other we take to off-site storage, which is next to Carver High School, actually. And that way, should we ever have a well-placed tornado in downtown, we're up and running as soon as possible. So briefly, our records fall into 7 categories: county commission, back to the beginning of the county nearly, Office of Probate Court. You may wonder why probate court records only pick up in 1850. Does anybody know why? Because probate courts weren't created in Alabama until 1850, as I understand. I mean, that's what I've read. Revenue Commission records, County Circuit and Chancery Court records, that's unique because that's an AOC, Administrative Office of Court record, but as I understand it, 2 archivists ago, Lynn Frazier, who is a legend locally in terms of archives, took these records in. As I understand it, AOC was running out of space, and we wanted to do our part. Thank you. We have some Sheriff's Office records, mainly mugshots and jail logs, a little bit of County Board of Education. That wide time span is misleading because we really have 4 or 5 things. It seems those records have stayed with the County Board of Education. And then, of course, our special collections materials, like the Fulmer papers, the bus boycott, mugshots. And so here's a hint. What do you think our most requested record is?
Roosevelt Parks.
Yeah.
So there's Rosa. And of course we have, E.D. Nixon and, all the giants of the civil rights movement, their mugshots from the boycott are in our collections. And we constantly, we get calls from Germany to, Dothan for this image. So it is widely used. Anybody know what that is?
Oh, that's Bill of Sale.
That's a slave inventory.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm sure all of you know what an estate file is. Somebody passes away, we have to divvy up the assets, deal with debts and things like that. Well, slaveholders died and they had debts. And we have hundreds of files like this where we have lists of enslaved people, their names, their values, sometimes their ages, sometimes family structure is conveyed on these documents. These are invaluable for numerous reasons, from genealogy to understanding, the economics of slavery. So briefly, this man, in today's dollars, had an estate worth about $2 million, and 70% of it was in human beings.
What year was that?
He passed away in 1863. Of course, there was a war, so the estate did not get settled till after the war, at which point, because of the loss, he was declared insolvent. He died in debt, essentially, and his family was left with nothing, essentially.
Let me ask, on the slavery records, what years do you have the records for? Is it just from Montgomery County, you saying?
Well, yeah, these are only county records. So, records of slavery from the beginning of the county, 1816 to, you usually see them taper off about 63. You have the Emancipation Proclamation around that time, and then the Union comes running into Montgomery in, 1864 or thereabouts, and so that, of course, wipes that institution, formal slavery anyway, away. In closing, we have a few projects that are ongoing and upcoming. The Slave Index, so what we're doing, I have a small staff, I have an intern and a volunteer, and we're going through those estate files, you remember, oh, there it is, and we're going through, and it's a basic Excel file, and we go through and we get the names of all the enslaved people, we put out their names, their ages, their owner, their sex, everything onto this index, because these people otherwise were lost to history unless a historian comes in. I would say we have about 1,400 names on the list right now. Historians estimate that there were around 20,000 people enslaved in Montgomery by 1860. so we have a ways to go. We have a podcast. It's called In the Stacks. It's about local history topics and records. So get on your iTunes or Google Play account. Check it out. Don't judge us too harshly. You know, we're not sound engineers at Google or Apple, but it's passable.
What's the name of it again? I'm sorry.
In the Stacks.
In the Stacks.
All right.
Thank you.
And the last thing we're doing, this is really exciting, is Alabama Mosaic, which will bring up the webpage at any second. In the meantime, Alabama Mosaic. So Mosaic is like a digital archive, and essentially institutions from the biggest, University of Alabama to the Montgomery County Archives can contribute digitized materials with descriptive data, and the whole world can see it. So, it really allows institutions that are smaller, like the county archives, to, leverage this and get their materials out there. So if you go to Browse All Collections at the top, and we'll show one real quick in closing. Let's see, Auburn University is a good one. And just pick anything. Just click on any one of them. All right, so that's what, a digitized record will look like in there. Click on, just pick a record. So then a researcher will not only get to see the record, but if you scroll down, you'll see all the information that goes with it. The Montgomery County Archives expects to go live with our collection on Mosaic in a couple of months, so keep an eye out for that. So in closing, I guess I'll take any questions. I know I'm probably up against my 15, 20-minute time limit.
Do you have a brochure?
We do not have a brochure, but we are on the web. So if you just Google Montgomery County, Alabama Archives, we have an extensive website that will tell you all the records we have. We have digital exhibits that are amazing. We have field trip guides, lesson plans. One of our lesson plans is actually included in the name escapes me. There's essentially a lesson plan exchange on the web run by the State Department of Education, and our lesson plan is on there. So we have a host of materials that can really enrich your archival experience beyond just researching.
Well, excuse internet challenge people like me, but what you're saying when you go online as Alabama Mosaic, you mean you're going to have a link on that website?
Yeah, so if you go back to the Mosaic homepage, go to the top. So Mosaic, think of Mosaic as like, the Russian nesting dolls, right? The doll within the doll within the doll. Mosaic is the big doll, okay? Mm-hmm. And the contributors contribute collections. And so those are like the smaller dolls. And then the materials that we contribute are the smallest dolls, right? And so this is a way to get collections that otherwise people are not going to see, right, or come to see. Who's going to drive to Auburn to, so it's a way to utilize the web. It's 2018. We're trying to do this as much as possible. Yeah, Tuskegee has is a great partner on this, and is an example of the type of partners that we do have.
It's actually, isn't it coordinated by the Department of Archives and History?
Unofficially,
Kinda.
yes. Officially,
The people are there.
Yeah,
So
day to day, it's really being run by the Department of Archives and History. The name escapes me of the consortium that actually administers and got the grant for it. This is a grant-funded project, so I imagine its survival is ensured for a time.
statewide. So in other words, you can look into the card catalogs of all of these different institutions without having to go to each one particularly.
Now, case in point, here's my disclaimer now. This is like the iceberg, where you only see, 10% you see, 90% you don't see. What we put on the web is only, of course, a sliver of what's actually in the archive. So, but it's a good way to, get people into research. Anything else?
Do you have maps?
Some county maps, particularly of the parcel variety,
Oh, okay.
given our our rural and land records. However, this is really cool. Do you guys know about the Sanborn Insurance Company?
Do you guys
know what the Sanborn Insurance Company is? No. So the Sanborn Insurance Company went around to these communities, right, all over the country, and they rated each structure for its, Carol, help me out, what's the term I'm looking for?
Flammability.
Flammability.
Well, I mean, they'll say whether it's wood or brick or...
Right, they get down to the nitty-gritty, but what they also do is for any given year, give you a picture of what that physical landscape of that community looked like. And we have I believe the 1953 copy of Montgomery.
Okay.
And you should see right where the interstate is now. It's a whole neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Before you take your seat, I'd just like to thank you for the update and to invite you to come back maybe a year from now, whenever you have some additional information you think the public needs to know,
Sure.
to feel free to come back and make an additional presentation.
Well, fantastic.
Okay.
All right, thank you all.
Dr. Hansberry, before you leave, the public here in Montgomery in particular have no idea you even exist.
Well,
How do you, well, I mean, but the point is, most people get their information either electronically, the news, TV news, or if in fact the newspaper would print a spread on actually your office and what your responsibilities are and what's available. I think that would be to your interest and their interest to know this.
yeah, we certainly do as much outreach as we possibly can. So I've been there 2 full years, and in 2 full years, I think I've done 13 presentations. I've been on WSFA twice. I've had a couple of news stories written. You know, I'm literally at a department of officially one. So, and I'm sure some of us can identify with that. So that's why we do things like the podcasts, because we've noticed, you know, we can track our user numbers, and we are reaching a decent-sized audience. We monitor our web traffic, and we do get a fair amount of people who are finding us through the web. You know, we create things like the lesson plans so that educators can know about us. We have field trip guides. Unfortunately, the big boys up the street at the State Archives get the Alabama 4th grade history classes every year. But my point is we're doing as much as we possibly can. And I think organizations like this could really help the county archives by going into their communities and telling their friends and neighbors about us and sending them our way. We'd love to work with, you know, all the districts that we all represent on this commission.
Okay, before you take your seat, give us a 30-second recap. What you are, who you are, where you're located, and a telephone number.
Well, all right. So I'm Dallas Hanbury, the county archivist. We're located at 101 South Lawrence Street in downtown Montgomery, Alabama, and you can reach us at 334-832-7173 or at DALLASHAN, B as in boy, URY, at mc-ala.org.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay. As we continue with our agenda this afternoon, we have upcoming presentations. And we'd like to encourage our other commissioners to feel free to come before this body and give us a feel for what's going on in your professional life, or to invite someone who can come before us and have something that you feel the viewing audience would have an interest in. So with that being said, do we have any suggestions for future presentations?
Dr. Bailey, Cindy has lined up March's presentation.
Douglas Watson from St. Jude.
Yes.
He was the former executive director, but he was also born there. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Okay, when did we schedule him?
For the March meeting, March 13th.
For the March? Okay, all right. Okay, Douglas Watson for the March meeting?
Right.
Okay, all right. Very good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Very good, yeah. Anyone else? Anyone else?
I think I'm April,
yes.
aren't I?
You're April.
I'm April, 50 years of
Sure.
preservation in
All
Montgomery.
right, okay.
May is awards, so June would be our next
All right.
opportunity to have someone
Sure.
do a presentation.
What do we want?
Does someone here now have a burning idea or suggestion that you like to put on our calendar for the remainder of the year? Something just burning, you want it to sit still.
And I think
Okay.
we do have a fairly good list of
Sure.
potential, so it may be time to go back and do a practical or a hands-on, like we talked about, architectural styles or something like that. One of our potential list, I think.
Sure. Okay.
We can
All
look
right.
at that.
All right. Revamping the historic sign program.
I just put that on the agenda so I wouldn't forget about them. They said they would plan to report back in April. That was just to keep it on my radar.
Okay.
I don't remember things very well these days.
Okay, so we have something in our April meeting regarding our historic sign program. Carol, awards?
Okay, this is our official launch of our 2018 Historic Preservation Awards, which actually will honor projects that were finished in 2017. Last year we had a really good kickoff, our first year, where the goals of our awards were to encourage excellence in the projects that are happening around our city, whether they're in historic designated areas or not, and then to create a public awareness, just to show it off, and also to bring attention to the economic impact that it would also have as well. So in your packet, you do have the call for nominations. So please take it back to your neighborhoods, your neighborhood organizations, and what we have sort of a plan here where we will launch this into the neighborhoods through bonds and then through our historic neighborhood coalition soliciting nominations. We've got a panel of judges who will look over them like they did last year and actually make the final decisions. It's structured, but we also have a little bit of room to look around for projects as well. We've got residential projects that come under several different headings, and we also have commercial projects. We're looking at craftspeople too, people who are outstanding in their work, and then other types of recognitions as well, just sort of a miscellaneous of areas for people to be acknowledged who are also in other arenas of the historic preservation movement. So it's outlined pretty much in this nomination, and we will take nominations until April the 6th, and then that will give us some time to review them and then have our winners in here for our awards presentation on May the 8th, which would be our May HPC meeting, and also basically, this is our observance, Montgomery's observance of Historic Preservation Month as well. So if anybody has any questions, you can either check in with me or Christy, and
we do have the application on the website now. So
okay, good.
If
good.
anyone goes to the planning department webpage and goes to the HPC section, this application is online.
Questions, comments? Okay, Chris, do you have anything?
No.
All right. Mr. Smith is not here. Any of our commissioners has any kind of event going up you'd like to bring to our attention? Anything you want to tell us about that makes certain we need to know? Nobody's doing anything?
Dr. Bailey, I do
Yes.
believe you have an event to bring to our attention.
Which one is that?
The one at the State Archives.
Oh, okay. Yes. I will speak at the State Archives noon Thursday, day after tomorrow, on Alabama's first Reconstruction Legislature. 1868. And I invite everybody to come, please. Anything else? Anything else? With that being said, this meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you for coming.